Thanks. I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm really excited to share this story with you. I have to warn you, though, it's not a story about really exciting data sets, although they definitely feature in the story. It's not a story about really exciting technology. We definitely use some of that, and it's in the story. It's not a story about really cool analytics. Again, that's in the story. It's not about that. It's about a story that's about something a lot more fundamental than that. It's about culture. It's about using all of those things, data, analytics, and technology, to drive and to change a culture. A lot deeper than that. This is about, I'll tell you first about why the music industry needs to make that change, and then about how EMI has done that and how we're still doing that. So first, you might ask why the music industry needs to make this change. I say you might ask because unless you've been living under a rock, I think you probably know the answer. And the answer is that times are changing in the music industry. The old world, people paid for music in big ways and money flowed. The hits were really big and they paid for all of the misses. No one had to worry about data or analytics. It just wasn't part of the vocabulary. But that's not the world we live in right now. We live in a new world of ones and zeros, of digital distribution of music. And in the new world, things are very different. Let me paint that picture by showing you UK revenues for the music industry over the last decade. I think the UK is a pretty representative example. You can guess what it looks like, but seeing that graph of the decline in revenues is stark. People aren't paying for music in the way they once did, so there's the problem. That's why the industry needs to change and needs to evolve. So what did EMI do about that? Well, I mean, the first thing you do when you have a big problem is you try to understand it, right? You try to understand what's happening. So we spoke to people. We tried to understand. We actually really had conversations with people, and with lots and lots of people. In fact, over the last 3 years, we've spoke to 1 million people, detailed online interviews, gathering vast amounts of data, rich and poor, young and old, all around the world, people who love music, people who really aren't interested in music. I'll tell you in a minute that there weren't very many of them. All different countries, all different artists. We played music, we played videos, we asked them about products and pricing and marketing these days. Everything we could think of. And this is at the core of what we've used to help us to change and to understand. So what did all this data give us? What did it actually tell us? Well, the first thing is it really shone a light into the dark corner and showed us why the revenues are doing what they're doing. 70% of people are frustrated in some way with the music industry right now. That's interesting, but it's not very actionable. You need to break that down. What are the components of that? What are the different things that different people feel? And there are many. Some people say, I'd like to buy new music, but I don't know what to buy these days. It's a discovery problem. So even in the age of Pandora, recommendations engines, Last.fm, it's not a solved problem in the eyes of many consumers. Some people say, I used to know where to find music, but now I can't find what I want. In the age of digital distribution and many different ways in which you can buy and consume music nowadays, in the eyes of many people, perhaps because of so many ways of discovering and consuming music nowadays, in the eyes of many people, that's not a solved problem. They don't know where to go now. I really miss the deeper relationship I used to have with music, when I could touch and feel it, when I could read the liner notes, read the stories and the lyrics. Now you just give me this digital file with a thumbnail image on it. How do I connect with that? Some people say it's too expensive. We've done great things to correct that. But some people also say it's too cheap. They want a richer, more engaging experience from music these days, and they want to spend money on it. So 70% of people are frustrated in some way, and breaking that down helps us to understand it and know what to do differently as a result. Let me tell you why we should bother with that. I think it's obvious to many of you. Just picture that piece of music that you find which touches you deep inside or puts that smile on your face, that great new track you found or that great new artist you've discovered. That's the reason why we need to try. But let me show you that that's not just you and me that feel that way. Let me show you that actually music is a very special thing. It's actually the most loved form of entertainment. Let me start by ranking different forms of entertainment from our data set. This is UK data. Again, it's pretty representative of the rest of the world. So let's look at young to old, lowest ranked to highest ranked forms of entertainment. At the bottom, we have antiques. Okay, pretty loose definition of the word entertainment here. But bear with me. Next, we have politics, which is interesting these days, and I used to work in politics. I know how hard work it is to spend all day, every day, trying desperately to get people to care about something that they're just not passionate about. That's not the problem we have in the music industry. Let's keep going. Religion. This is going to be on YouTube, so I'll refrain from making any amusing jokes about religion on here. And instead, let's look next. Sport, which you might think is totally part of everyone's life. People who love it make a big deal of it, but it's not everybody, and it's not close to the top of the rankings. Let's zip through some more. Photography, taking photos. Books, yay, it's really high, but not for young people. What a difference age makes. Traveling behaves similarly. Exercising flips the pattern, it's the other way around. We're getting to decent levels of enthusiasm now. Fashion, maybe. Games, look how stark the drop-off is there after young people on games. Cinema, TV. Think about how many hours of TV we watch as a country, as a world these days. It's near the top, but it's not the top. Internet and technology I put together. How high? And look how relatively flat they are compared to some of these others. Look how universal these things are in people's lives these days. There's one left, and you can guess what it's going to be. Yeah, music. So full on, 98% of people tell us that music's important in their life in some way. They're not all passionate about it, but 98% of people say it's important in their life in some way. It doesn't happen for any other form of entertainment. So we've got this drop-off in revenues. People aren't paying for music anymore, and this is why we should care. Because music is a really special thing in people's lives, and we should help you to find those artists and the music that you love to give you that feeling. And the artists who are creating that music deserve to be paid for that, and they deserve the marketing investment to help them to connect with the right audiences as well. So we've got a problem, and we need to do something about it. We care. And this is our challenge, in essence, that we've brought data to bear on. Our challenge is, for each of our artists, they're all very different people, very different music, very different consumers, but for each of them, not just one or two, not just the big ones, for all of those artists deserve this attention. And for each of our different countries, the answer's very different by country. It's quite amazing how different an artist's audience is across different countries. So for each artist and for each country, which consumers should they be connecting with? What prices, what products, which music connects in that country with that type of consumer? Which sales channels, which products? An immense collection of interesting questions, actionable questions, that we've brought this data to bear on. So this is where we are at EMI. And I want to take a moment just to talk about how we've done that and give you a couple of illustrations. I think the first point is, how do we do it? Well, obviously we brought data to bear. I said that. So you squeeze data until the pips squeak and you get insight, right? And then you use insight to make decisions. That's how the world works. Obviously not. It's obviously not how the world works in the music industry, because it's real people with feelings and emotions make decisions, not data. You can't build a business that way. It's actually not how the decision-making works in any industry, whether it's mergers and acquisitions or politics or supermarkets where I've worked before. Real people make decisions. Data helps them to make the decision. So let's not pretend that data is the answer, but obviously it's part of the answer. Here's how we think of it. Start with data, or the insight that you get from data, whether that's the billions of records of transaction data we get from suppliers, or whether it's the millions of people we speak to and the data points they give us. But start with the insight from data, but it sits alongside skills and judgment, alongside the people who work in the business. Not on top, not below, alongside, together. And it's the relationship between the two which is absolutely key in building this culture, but also in making the data actually work. And we recognize and are proud of the fact that people drive that data. They ask questions and hypotheses. They're troubled by things that we use data to flush out or add color to or challenge. And then in turn, the data's job is to help those people. It's to support them and guide them and encourage them and challenge them as well. And this relationship between the people in the business and the data is absolutely at the heart of what we've been able to achieve at EMI. So just be honest about the role of data alongside skills and judgment. And together, the beautiful relationship happens, great decisions are made, and it's embedded as part of the culture. How do we do that? Well, a couple of points on what we do and how we do it. I mean, the first is It's great to have lots of data, but it doesn't mean anything unless it's distilled down into something that's actionable and usable by people day to day. And one of the key ways in which we do that is to turn the data and the insights from the data into language. For example, and this is not rocket science, many people have done this in many other industries, but to do it really well is special, is to turn not just facts and figures about who buys music nowadays, but turn that into segments of consumers who have names and personalities. I'm not talking about marketing-driven, fluffy segments of consumers. I'm talking about data-driven, evidence-based types of people, which is a beautiful mix of the data and the million interviews we've done and words and language and phrases and people that people in the business day-to-day can keep in their heads and can make use of. If you turn the data into language, which helps to embed it in the culture, it means that what happens is, instead of just data being useful in those meetings where somebody brings a graph to the meeting, if it's part of the language, suddenly data is useful in every meeting, whether there's a graph or not, because people have that knowledge deep inside of them. So distilling data down into language is one of the key things. Another is to not set out on big, bold projects without first proving it and iterating it as you go along. So I call this prove and then build, which sounds slightly like the other way around, but bear with me. And one illustration of this is how we've used these million interviews to help inform artists. So what we started with, after the first wave of interviews, is on my computer, I built this cool Excel spreadsheet with some nice graphs. And we used that for the first 10 artists or so, and we sat with the artist managers and we talked about the consumers and the countries and the different products that were needed, and we got benefits and results, we got action, we signed contracts and we did big changes to marketing plans as a result. No big tech investment, no massive planning horizon, we just did it, and we learned and iterated as we went along. That doesn't scale very well. There's only so many spreadsheet skills I have. So the next thing was we got people smarter than me to add more code to the spreadsheet and automate it. That got us to helping about up to 100 artists. That scaled pretty well. By this point, basically everyone who was a priority at EMI around the world had research for them in the hands of the team who were supposed to be using it, and they were using it as part of the marketing plans. It scaled pretty well. That's not everybody yet. So next, very simple, uploaded the spreadsheet to Excel services. It looks like a web-based interface, reporting interface to the average user. Behind the scenes, it's really just a spreadsheet. So we can still tweak it. We can still iterate it. We're not locked into this tech development. Scales pretty well. So by this time, the artists and their managers on their private jets flying around the world, whenever they get off in whichever country, they talk to the local team there about the same consumer segments, the same research, the same language as they talked about in the global head office. So we're part of the culture now. We're around the world. Most artists are getting help from this research in this way. It doesn't scale very well beyond the first 1,000 or so. And now we've got all this music and all these artists around the world. So we've stepped up to reporting services is the next on our list. And this will break at some point and we'll go on to the next one. But it was a really, really, really simple way of thinking about it, which is to prove what you're doing first in a trial, and then just scale it whenever you need to. And the alternative is a long tech development to build our end state product, which may or may not have worked, and certainly wouldn't have allowed the level of iteration and evolution that got us to where we are. It's a very simple methodology of proving and then building. And this, by the way, works just as well on the tech development side of things, providing data to people, as it does on the data science side of things. If you build a first model on your data using pretty crude data science tools, it's going to add an awful lot of value, and it's going to prove that value pretty quickly if there's something to be found. You can then invest in the fancy machine learning algorithms down the road which add value beyond that. But prove it first and then iterate and then build. That was how we did it anyway. So that's really the EMI story and the music story. This is how things work at EMI now. Data's there, it's part of the culture, it's in part of our decision-making, alongside skills and judgment. It's how we are, it's part of our culture, and we're doing it because the artists deserve to find their audiences, and you deserve to be able to find those audiences, and we want to help. So, thank you.